The electric eel is a truly strange creature. Located in the freshwater basins of South America, its average length of 2 to 2.5 meters would already make it a formidable adversary for any aquatic creature. However, the reason why it remains the apex predator of South America's freshwaters is not due to its claws or teeth or strength. Instead, its remarkable ability to use electricity, powerful enough to temporarily paralyze most creatures, has catapulted it to the top of the food chain. But it wasn't always this way. Once upon a time, the electric eel's premier ability didn't even exist at all, only forming after an evolutionary journey spanning millions of years. And so, from its humble beginnings to a staple of evolutionary greatness, let me tell you the story of the electric eel. In order to get the full history of the electric eel, we have to travel back to approximately here. This is Gondwana. Here, during the Cretaceous, a group of bony fish known as the Ostariophyzons began to diversify in its freshwater systems. These ancient fishes are the ancestors of many species of fish we know today, including catfishes, minnows, and knifefishes. One of these Ostariophyzon lineages began to diversify in Gondwana's western freshwaters, and even though we have no images, no name, and no fossils of this fish, based on its living ancestors today, scientists hypothesized that this fish was capable of weak electroreception. Since all living creatures on Earth passively emit weak bioelectrical signals, this means that this fish was able to detect these electrical signals, and depending on if these signals indicated a predator or a prey, which usually depends on the size of the signal, this fish would either swim away from the signal source or eat it. Sometime during the Cretaceous, this fish species split into two descendants, the gymnotiforms and the siluriforms. The splitting of these two groups left the gymnotiforms in modern-day South America, while the siluriforms went on to populate many areas across the world. At this point in the electric eel's evolutionary journey, even though electroreception, the ability to sense bioelectrical fields, was possible, the defining trait of the electric eel, its ability to discharge large amounts of electricity, was not possible. However, this would soon change through the emergence of electric organs. After the divergence with the siluriforms, the gymnotiforms began to further build upon their electric repertoire. Through the development of electric organs during the late Cretaceous, they became one of the only fish groups in the world that is not only capable of electroreception, but also electrogenesis. Let me explain. Even though all animals on Earth generate very weak passive electrical fields, animals possessing electrogenesis can, on command, generate electric fields that are more strong, more coordinated, and more purposeful than passive electric fields. These fields generated by the electric organ will become distorted when they come into contact with an object. Furthermore, factors such as the object's material composition, the object's level of conductivity, and the distance of the object to the gymnotiform would distort the electric field in differing ways. The gymnotiform would then use its ability of electroreception in order to decipher these distortions in its electrical field and act accordingly. So we know that electric organs are potentially incredibly valuable to the gymnotiforms. But how would they get these electric organs? Well, here's how. In all fishes under the Teleos group, including the gymnotiforms, the SCN4A gene is duplicated into the SCN4AA gene and the SCN4AB gene. These genes are, in most fish, both expressed and focused on muscle contraction, but in order to evolve their electric organs and gain the ability of electrogenesis, the gymnotiforms repurpose the SCN4AA gene, turning muscle precursor cells into a type of cell called an electrocyte. These electrocytes vary in size and shape and are placed in different spots, but generally, thousands of them are stacked on top of each other in end-to-end columns. Multiple of these columns are then arranged parallel to each other, resulting in a myogenic electric organ. This organ is usually a long structure that runs throughout the hypaxial muscle and can release electric fields on command in what is known as an electric organ discharge, or EOD. This myogenic electric organ not only gave the gymnotiforms the aforementioned ability to use electrogenesis, but also allowed for more effective electrocommunication, which can assist in species recognition, mate signaling, and marking of territory. Even though gymnotiforms developed these electric organs, the amount of electricity that these organs can discharge were not capable of stunning predators or prey. And as the gymnotiforms split into different families, they maintained their electrogenesis ability. But soon, one of them would end up using it not only for communication and navigation, but for attack and defense. So how did any of these gymnotiforms actually evolve into the electric eel that we know today? Well, remember when we talked about how gymnotiforms developed electric organs, adapting their SCN4AA genes and changing their precursor muscle cells into electrocytes? Well, this order of animals, the gymnotiform order, split into families, and eventually, one of the genera under the Gymnotidae family looked at this process and went all in. As a result, roughly around 50 to 60 million years ago, the Electrophorus genus split from the Gymnotidae family and went on to develop not one, not two, but three distinct electric organs, the only genus on planet Earth with this many organs dedicated to production of electricity.
These three organs, the main organ, the hunter's organ, and the suck's organ, take up 80% of the eel's body, with only 20% of its body being dedicated to other organs.
These three electric organs of the eel assisted in various forms of electric organ discharge, and in order to have a more comprehensive understanding of how the electric eel works, let's take a look at these three organs and the specific function each one possesses by analyzing the electric eel's hunting process. However, let's get one thing out of the way first. There's not one species of electric eel. There are three. After the Electrophorus genus separated from the Gymnotus genus, it split further into three separate species: Electrophorus electricus, Electrophorus volti, and Electrophorus vari. Through the analysis of genes, scientists were able to determine that the split between the group of Electrophorus volti and Electrophorus electricus from Electrophorus vari occurred roughly 7.1 million years ago, while the split between Electrophorus volti and Electrophorus electricus happened roughly 3.6 million years ago. In the scientific world, the term electric eel refers only to the species Electrophorus electricus. Even though there are differences, most notably some physical attributes and living locations, the three species are overall incredibly similar. They all possess the same three electrical organs, with each organ serving an identical function across all three species. Hence why it took up until 2019 to even discover that there were three separate species to begin with. Due to the overall similarity between the three species, the term electric eel in this video specifically has been, and henceforth will be continued to be used, as a term denoting all three species under the Electrophorus genus, with distinctions made when necessary. And with that out of the way, let's see how the electric eel uses each of its electric organs to hunt down its prey. When the electric eel begins its hunt, it maps out its surrounding with the suck's organ. The suck's organ can only produce a very low amount of volts, and so its only purpose is to substitute for the electric eel's poor eyesight. Using suck's organ, the electric eel can sense rock formations, foliage, and prey. When the electric eel finds its prey, it will swiftly but silently make its way to its target, preparing to strike. When the eel reaches its target, according to studies, around 90% of the time, it uses the hunter's organ to send out a singular, medium voltage EOD, which lasts roughly 2 milliseconds long. The precise purpose of this medium voltage EOD is at the moment unknown, and the reasons why the electric eel ever developed the hunter's organ in the first place is equally elusive. But nonetheless, roughly 3 milliseconds after the hunter's organ discharge, the eel will then use the main organ. By far the largest electrical organ out of the three, the main organ stores the most electrocytes, and even though each electrocyte can only produce a couple hundred millivolts, when the electric eel decides to release a high voltage EOD, all of these electrocytes discharge at basically the same time, and the total electrical output of the attack, depending on the species, can reach up to hundreds of volts. This is more than enough to partially paralyze any prey, but not totally incapacitate them. To ensure complete safety during the consumption of its prey, the eel will then curl its body, shortening the electrical path from predator to prey and completely paralyzing its prey, allowing for easy, resistance-free consumption. Pretty cool, right? But that sequence of events is only done with prey. When a predator, usually an animal larger than the eel, which it feels intimidated by, approaches the electric eel will leap up and attempt to hug the predator as much as possible, increasing the damage of its attack and the potential for partial or full incapacitation. Perhaps the most famous testimony of the electric eel's power was written by Alexander von Humboldt, who noted that electric eels could stun and paralyze horses, causing some of them to drown. As you can probably surmise after my explanation, the ability of the electric eel to dispense electricity was an excellent evolutionary trait that offered both defensive and offensive capabilities. But it was lonely. Ever since the electric eel was discovered in 1766, scientific consensus always showed that in its day-to-day life, the electric eel would act alone. This opinion was formed due to a multitude of reasons. There was the fact that many serious encounters with humans almost always involved only one eel, the fact that its relatives, the knife fishes, are also considered solo hunters, and the fact that its ability was already so effective that the need for cooperation seemed arbitrary. Point was, the electric eel is a nocturnal, solitary hunter, and generally, it would quietly roam the seas where it would eat food, mate, and ultimately die. It was clear to see that individual electric eels lived a sad, lonely life. At least that's what we thought at first. This video that I'm showing you right now shows one of the first documented times electric eels was seen collaborating with each other for an extended period of time. It was captured in 2012 when a dedicated team of researchers recorded a section of the Erie River in order to study the behavior of the electric eel. After initial recordings in August of 2012, the team returned 2 years later in October of 2014, and what they filmed there on both occasions was truly fascinating. This is the general timetable of the group of roughly 100 individual eels from the species Electricus volti during the 2014 observation. In the resting stage, the eels laze around, with members occasionally surfacing out of the river in order to breathe, since the gills of the electric eel are insufficient for underwater breathing. The stage would end at dawn, at which time the electric eels began the interaction stage. The electric eels would spend roughly 30 minutes from 5 to 5:30 a.m. interacting socially with one another, and afterwards would commence the migration stage, swimming together as a loose group to a more shallow section of the river. Finally, the hunting stage would begin. In this stage, the electric eels would encircle and herd shoals of small fish into a ball of prey. The electric eels would then expertly maneuver this prey ball into an even smaller section of the hunting area, using yet another ability for this, the ability to swim backwards. Yeah, electric eels can moonwalk, and this allows the electric eel to simultaneously block escape routes while having a clear sense of their targets at all times. When they have brought the shoals of fish into a satisfactory position, they will continue to swim circles around the ball of prey, and finally, some eels would separate from this circle, approach the prey ball, and discharge their electricity at the same time, resulting in this. After eating some of their shocked prey and repeating this attack multiple times, the electric eels would then return to their resting area, where they would then enter the resting stage again. This entire process is repeated once again at dusk for a total of 2 cycles a day, with each cycle lasting around 2.5 hours. This behavior was seen in both the 2012 and 2014 observations, showing that social predation for these electric eels was not just a one-off event, but a constant and consistent factor in their day-to-day lives. This extraordinary display of social predation completely altered the way the scientific world viewed the electric eel, as it was now not only considered a formidable solo hunter, but clearly capable of teamwork, shown to effectively collaborate with other members of its species to more easily eat its prey. But this obviously raised the question, how much do we truly know about the electric eel? We still know shockingly little about the electric eel to this day. There are major questions about it that scientists are still completely in the dark about. For example, why did they develop the hunter's organ, seeing as its current usage seems irrelevant? When and how did they begin to act socially? And most importantly of all, why are they called electric eels when they are a knifefish and more related to catfishes and carp than they are to a true eel? Regardless of the answer to these questions, it's clear that the world has many more things to learn about the electric eel, even though it's enormously hard to research due to multiple factors. One thing is for certain though, as of right now, the electric eel is at the top of its game. It's one of the premier predators in South American waters, with few natural predators to speak of. Its population is booming, with 2 out of 3 species having a conservation status of least concern on the endangered spectrum, while the other species, Electrophorus vari, not having a specific conservation status yet. The story of the electric eel is, as I hope I've conveyed through the course of this video, an incredibly fascinating journey. It is one of the most unique hunting tools in the world, is the most powerful bioelectric generator in nature, and is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most interesting animals on planet Earth. And the best part is, its story isn't even over yet. The electric eel continues to evolve, and although it's unknown if that continued evolution means it'll make further changes to itself, nature works in mysterious ways, and in my opinion, it's just a matter of time until we hear from the electric eel again.
Hello everyone, Radicus here. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this video. This was my first animal-centric video, and trust me, there'll be much more in the future because I really enjoyed this sort of content. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you could please go down and like and subscribe to my channel because it'll help me a lot. My channel is a lot smaller than you think. Anyways, once again, thank you for watching until the end of it, and I hope you all have a grand evening.